Fletcher, producer and owner of the Asleep at Work Network, and I'm very excited to welcome you to the Herd on the Line podcast. If you like what you hear, head to the links in the description, find out how you can get in touch and support the podcast, get in touch and support the Asleep at Work Network, and interact with our amazing hosts. But without further ado, more importantly, lads, it's over to you.
Cheers, Sam. Evening, lads. Hope you're all doing well. Yeah, so just a quick recap on the news that's broken over the last week or so in the NFL world. We'll start off with Hall of Fame. O.J. Simpson has passed away at age 76. That's following the battle with cancer. Swiftly moving on, the NFL has decided to introduce a third alternative helmet design with 12 new helmets, including the position-specific helmets that will also be made to NFL teams. The Jets today have unveiled their new uniform. If you haven't seen the colours of that, it looks quite slick. So head over to the NFL or to Jets website, and you should be able to see some pictures there. There is rumours that Lions are going to be releasing their uniform next week as well, so we'll keep a close eye on to that one. Rashee Rice has finally handed himself into the police after that accident that occurred a couple of weeks ago. I just want to touch quickly base onto Tom on this one. What's the word around the Chiefs opinion? We're quite close to that. So is there any word around what's going on in that in the actual Chiefs facility and that?
So as far as I'm aware, so it's voluntary. What do you call it? It's off-season program time. So no players are actually in the building or anything in the facility, but I know he's been training with Mahomes down in Texas, as have all the wide receivers. But I was listening to the Chiefs today, Andy Reid talking about it and saying, we're going to let the authorities take their course, and then, we'll take the course of action that we need to. I imagine that Rice will get between a 4 and an 8 game suspension. And then it'll be interesting to see what kind of actions the Chiefs take as a result of that. But yeah, in terms of from Chiefs Kingdom, that's kind of the main update that we've had.
Cheers, bud. Moving on to the NFL re-signs. So we've had 3 players that have signed new deals. So linebacker Josh Allen, he signed a 5-year deal with Jacksonville. It's a $150 million deal with an $88 million guaranteed. Then there was another signing that was announced today. That was defensive tackle Buckner has re-signed a 2-year deal, $46 million contract extension with the Colts. And lastly, the wide receiver Devontae Smith has agreed a 3-year, $75 million contract extension with $51 million guaranteed. Anything in regards to those signings, guys? Anything that kind of stands out of the 3?
Yeah, a lot of money for Devontae Smith, but I think obviously with the upcoming wide receiver class that are up to get paid, when you look at Jefferson, Chase and CeeDee Lamb, I think it was good to get ahead of the curve and get that deal done early. From the Eagles' perspective, because 25 looks like a lot now, but in a couple of weeks, couple of months, whenever it happens, and the other extensions, get done, that's going to look like a good deal, in my opinion.
And just lastly, for what I have on the list was they announced the Brazil game. That's going to be played on Friday, September the 6th. And the teams that have been selected is the Packers will be playing against the Eagles. So Eagles will probably have the home game there. I'm probably going to throw this one back to you, Ollie, because on a couple of weeks ago, we touched on base in regards that you felt that the Browns could have had a shout at this game. Any kind of like reactions from your point of view or from the actual Browns industry?
Yeah, so slightly disappointing. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, I think it would have been a good opportunity for the Browns just to expand their brand. That's a hard word to say. But it does now mean that they maybe could play in the London game. Obviously, with being ruled out of the Brazil game, they do play Jacksonville this year away, so they're one of the teams in potential for the London game. So if we don't get the Brazil game, but it means we get the London game, then I'll be happy with that. So yeah, it's a bit of annoying, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Cheers. That's all from me from the NFL news. Sam.
Thank you for that, David. That was great. Great little news segment. Obviously, people have got their opinions, and just keep an eye out for when we talk about Break the Huddle again. It'll be on as and when there's big news to talk about around the NFL. Right, we're going to step into our main segment, which is around, which is obviously focused mainly on the draft. What we're going to do is we're going to look at we're going to go to each individual person on the pod. We're going to talk about their team's needs, who they think that, what they think of their position in the draft, who they think they should be getting, and what they think their team needs. So hopefully we should be able to get through everyone in a good enough time. What I'd like to do, though, is I'd like to start first with our Super Bowl champ fan in Tom. Tom, obviously, with the news that Rashee Rice has handed himself in and all the issues around with him, does that mean that wide receiver becomes a big part of your team's decision moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does. I think even before the Rashee Rice situation, the depth of the wide receiver group in Kansas City isn't really that high. Obviously, you've got Sky Moore and you got Kadarius Toney, but they barely did anything. And then Rashee Rice was the main part of that offense. So yeah, wide receiver is definitely a big part. I think three guys that I'm looking at are Troy Franklin, Xavier Worthy, and Keon Coleman. I think one of those three, if they fall to the Chiefs, if they manage to fall to the Chiefs at 32, probably more likely Franklin or Coleman. But I think a big threat wide receiver who can, be an added piece for the Chiefs. I think that's a big need.
Bro, thanks for that, Tom. Is there any other sort of positions that you think is going to be a particular need, or is there anything where you think maybe if we don't go wide receiver, anything else that you think maybe you should be looking at in this draft?
Yeah, I think the other big part is left tackle as well. I think that's something where the Chiefs have been inconsistent for a while. So I think people such as, because where the Chiefs are picking maybe Patrick Paul or Kingsley Suamata could be two offensive tackles, particularly Patrick Paul because he played left tackle as well at college. I think that could be a really important piece that the Chiefs need to add as well. So I think the top two needs are definitely offensive tackle, primarily left tackle, and wide receiver.
Bro, that's great. What I thought we'd do then, I mean, obviously there's plenty of needs. I know obviously with the Chiefs there is a little bit of a restructure in terms of maybe looking at some of the other positions. I mean, I know that David, you pointed out before, and when we've discussed about when there's been discussion with the Chiefs, maybe looking at a cornerback and maybe looking at developing more of a depth at that point. Obviously with Snead leaving, so yeah, there are other options that I mean. I think they're in a very good position. I think obviously the Chiefs are Super Bowl winners. They've still got Patrick Mahomes. They've still got Travis Kelce still there. So they have still got weapons on offense, and we know that Mahomes can do anything with the players he has around him. So thanks for that, Tom. Brill. What we'll do then, flipping the script of it, we're going to look at one of our very, very top picks. We're going to actually be looking at looking towards David and Carl with the Patriots, and obviously with the third pick in the draft, all the changes that have gone on around the Patriots. yeah, take it away, David and Carl. How are you feeling about the draft, and what are the team's needs and priorities?
This is from our point of view, or from the Patriots Nation's point of view, it's a very exciting time. I don't think we've had this high of a draft pick since the Belichick regime. I don't think we've had anything higher than
1993.
Yeah, so
None of whom we got Drew Bledsoe.
So it's definitely a position where it's a bit of back and forth from our point of view, from the feedback we're getting from our Patriots Nation side of things. There's a lot of people saying we need to go QB. There's other people saying that we need to trade out. You got the Harrison option as well. Personally, if I was GM and if I was sat in that chair and I was picking at number 3, I go QB, and I go. I'm taking May. Why May over possibility of having Daniels or JJ McCarthy? I think May, he's your kind of quarterback. You can start to mold him in. He's the youngest QB on the books on the draft the night. He does falter in regards to his footwork. It's probably not the best, but that's something that the coaching side can probably help him out in a bit. Having seen what he can produce via video and stuff like that, so his O-line wasn't fantastic in North Carolina, and I personally think his wide receiver core wasn't anything like what Daniels has in LSU, and he still made it out to be a top 3 quarterback for that year for the college football. So I'm taking May, and I think if May isn't to be on the board, if Washington do decide to take May, then it depends on if you're sold on one quarterback, or do you take the second quarterback best available to you, which then would probably be Daniels. But if May wasn't to be at number 2, I would then look at either trading out, or drafting the next best player, which to me is Harrison at wide receiver, which the Patriots don't have anything kind of like major weapons on that wide receiver core, which is something that we need to build on as well.
Yeah, for me, I would take Jaden Daniels over Drake May, and the reason being why is because I can only really see 2 quarterbacks that could actually start week 1 of this upcoming NFL season. One of them is obviously Caleb Williams. We know it's a lock to go to Chicago. And the other one for me is Jaden Daniels. He is that Lamar Jackson hybrid type of quarterback that, we massively messed up 2018, 2019 when Lamar Jackson was taken by the Ravens. We had that pick as well. We traded up to take a tackle, which didn't pan out well for us in the end. But going to the quarterback that we need, look, I've seen where we could get a high quality receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., but if you don't have a young quarterback to throw it to him, it's a bit of a needless thing, really. Trading down, it does make sense, but at the same time, I always look at the fact of this, okay, if you trade down and take a load of picks and you get your tackles, you get your receivers, it's a bit like trying to revamp a muscle car. You've got the nice wheels on, the new brakes are done, the suspension is brand new, you've got a brand new paint job, the interior is immaculate, it looks fantastic. The only problem with that is you have no bloody engine in the car, so you can't use it. This is why I say you take the quarterback. This is why I say you take Jaden Daniels. He recorded an FBS best 90 plays of 20 plus yards. The entire Patriots offense produced 37 such plays last season, which was the fewest in the NFL. So we're dying for this sort of thing ever since Tom Brady came to the fold, okay? Daniel's success is his ability of running with the ball, and his deep ball threat is ridiculous. He was the leading passer in the FBS, the leading rusher in the FBS. That's the reason why he's the Heisman Trophy winner. Listen, I'm not against Drake May, not at all. But I think if you
want to put Daniels in a week one and compete alongside Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi, then he's the guy for you. But if Washington takes him at 2, I'm more than happy with Drake May, sit him for a year, learn under Jacoby, and then we build him up for his second season, because there's no harm in sitting a quarterback. I hate this narrative that you need to start a top 3 quarterback, but you need to start in week 1. If he's just not quite the finished product, let him sit and then bring him in. You only have to look at the example of Jordan Love. Okay, he was sitting 4 years behind Aaron Rodgers. When he eventually got his chance, he absolutely took off. So, for me, you take Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting argument from both of you in terms of which quarterback. I think the general consensus is the likelihood is that the quarterback is going to be the pick. And I mean, if you go over to Hurdle Line's Twitter page, you will see some of us have done a few of the top 5 picks in the lead up to the draft. So if you want to go and look at those, then you're more than welcome to go and have a look. But on both of those, I think in most cases, we had Jaden Daniels or Drake May going in those second and third picks. So I do find it an interesting one that both of you have obviously talked about wanting a quarterback, but have gone different directions in which type of quarterback you'd want. And it's an interesting sort of debate as to who's going to be the one that goes at 2 in terms of who's then going to be left at 3. So yeah, I quite like that.
Sam, I got a question for the guys, Karl and David. If the quarterbacks you're arguing for aren't there, and it's the other quarterback, which could likely happen, depending on what Washington does, you're still Karl. I think you said you're fine with May if Daniels is gone. David, would you still want to take? If May is taken at 2, would you want? Would you want
See,
them to take Daniels?
I see it as May has been. There's much more for him to hit the ceiling. Daniels, I feel that we've seen what he's capable of doing, but can he make it any better? Can he improve on what he's done? May, I still think you've got that guy where he's going to be, he's climbing, and I don't think we've seen the max of what May is of a player yet. It's a difficult one, because I think if May's not on the board, and if I'm sold on May and I've done all my homework on May and he's not there, I don't think I should settle for the next quarterback that's on the board. I would go, like I say, I would go wide receiver, and I would then maybe see what's there on round 2, round 3, QB wise. If not, look, next year will be another year. And there is plenty of prospects out there as QBs coming into the NFL next year as well. So it could be a case where we roll with Brissett, or we draft later in the day, down the line.
I do think it's an interesting idea about the fact that, do you plan for, like we say, if we were to go Drake May, just using that as an example, obviously, Karl, you were saying that he's potentially, if you're going to look at Drake May, he is potentially one of those that will sit behind Brissett for a year. Does that, obviously, moving forward, the likelihood is that obviously Brissett is not necessarily going to be there for the long haul. Well, he isn't going to necessarily be there for the long haul. I don't think he would be. But sitting with him as a quarterback and maybe sort of bringing some of the pieces around Brissett for that year leading up to Drake May taking over, does that then eventually look at maybe you're going to be picking at another low pick again, and maybe that's where, you're planning 2 years in advance with Drake, that you're giving him that time to learn before loading him up with everything that he needs ready to go, almost like how Chicago have done this year with Caleb in terms of getting all the pieces ready for him, knowing they're then going to pick him and basically he's going to go away. Obviously, I'm not trying to compare Caleb to May or anyone like that, but just to sort of see, well, is there potentially a thought that if the quarterback that you want isn't there, that you actually just go, okay, we know we're going to be low picks for the next 2 years. We build a team around him ready to go.
The only way I see that is if Elliot Wolf is I think he's going to make the final decision on these draft picks. If he is not sold on Drake May, then you better come up with an idea. You better come up with a plan to get a smattering of picks in order for this to work. Okay, so our boy Nick Robinson over on the Patriots Touchback, he came off with, this is going to sound absolutely bonkers when we listen to this, by the way. So he found a trade. So he goes on Pro Football Focus and he goes on the simulator, right? He made a trade to the Giants to go from 3 to 6 and adding a first round pick from next year. Moved to 6 and then moved from 6 to 11 with Minnesota for switching picks for number 23 for next year's first round pick and I think a second round pick on top of that. Okay, you got a smattering of picks there to go over for the next 2 years. Everyone's shaking their heads. I guess yes, I'm not, yes. This is the sort of smoke that he does, right? It's bonkers. But if you can trade down with Minnesota and get those and swip the first round and get a 23rd pick, you can get a high class receiver and a high class left tackle. You fill 2 positions of need already off 1 round, and then in the second round you could either go for a corner, because we're going to be short of the corner position because Jack Jones has gone as well. So we're going to need someone to complement Gonzalez, who will be coming back from injury. I generally think if Gonzalez had actually stayed fit and healthy, he was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year. Completely shut down Tyreek Hill. Not many corners can actually do that. So, and there's still other position for us. Running back, I know we got Antonio Gibson as a third down back, but it'd be nice to bring a rookie in. I really want Blake Corum, but I don't think it's going to happen. And also tight end as well. Yes, Austin Hooper. Yes, Hunter Henry. But I've got my eyes set on the 5th, 6th round in Theo Johnson out of Penn State. So that's my little plan of what I want. But this all depends what New England go for. And at the end of the day, we go back to the original question. We need a quarterback, and I think that is what we're going to go for, whether it's Drake May or Jaden Daniels. If we switch, then we better have a plan ready for 2025. And then I will have to watch a lot more college football than the Michigan Wolverines. Let's put it that way.
I think it also depends on how much that third round pick is worth. If we're sitting there and there's offers on the table, but it's not to what we want to accept as what we deem as acceptable for that third round pick, then we're not going to sell. And we're probably not going to trade it out. So again, it's a draft day decision, and I don't know. Like
you mean
going
third
back
overall? You're saying third round pick?
Third
overall.
Sorry, yeah.
It's like,
just going back to as you mentioned, Michigan, Carl. Would you two be happy with trading back and taking a JJ McCarthy at, let's say, 11 with the Vikings, or would you also maybe be happy with sticking at 3, going Marvin Harrison Jr. and then seeing if you can get a Penix or a Bo Nix or a Spencer Rattler in the second or the third?
JJ's another Mac.
He is an upgraded version of Zach Wilson, right?
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. I'm a Wolverines fan and have been for over 8 years, okay? What I saw of JJ McCarthy was, he's a very good game manager. He only runs on third down. He's got good legs. He's got a good set of wheels on him, don't get me wrong. But the problem with this guy is it was the school he was in. Michigan, Jim Harbaugh's team was run the ball and play defense. In that championship game against Washington, JJ McCarthy threw for 140 yards. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards done the damage with 250 yards on the ground. If you have a blistering running game, JJ McCarthy will actually excel. But I was watching so many games where Michigan had to be close, and I didn't see clutch moments from JJ McCarthy. It was always ran by the running game. This is why I don't want JJ McCarthy. If he falls into the second round, then there might be another case in point. But I'm gonna say this: I think the top 6 guys, they're gonna go in. They go in the top 6. They're gonna go in the top 16. They're gonna go in the top half of round 1.
Carl, what about against Ohio State? Like, he threw the ball all over the place against Ohio State this year.
Did he?
One swallow doesn't make a summer.
That's good.
But Carl, isn't that the Patriots' way, running the ball and playing defense?
It was the old way. It's certainly not. I don't know what Gerard Mayo's way is going to be. We don't know. but I just don't know. If we take him at 3, I will lose my marbles. I will.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carl and David, for that. I do think that this is an interesting element that we're looking at with the Patriots. I do think that it's. I mean, I don't know, but I think most people do expect them to go quarterback. I think it is a almost foregone conclusion unless something, the back office decide to do something crazy. But we'll wait and see. We'll swiftly move on to a team who's going to be picking at the back end of the top 10 picks. Chapman, do you want to talk about where the Falcons are going to go with their picks?
We will be if we do keep our pick at 8, we'll be the first team in NFL history to have picked 8 3 years in a row, thanks to Arthur Smith's wonderful 7-10 coaching the last 3 years. Look, the two most important positions in football are the quarterback and hitting the quarterback. And the Falcons, in my opinion, did the best. They took the best option they had with where they were sitting in the draft and what they had in terms of cap, and went out and got Kirk Cousins. We could not have another year of Marcus Mariota. Obviously, Ritter was not the answer last year, and it was the best option I think they had. They weren't going to get in the top 3, I don't think, without mortgaging a lot. And again, I thought it was a prudent move, because you basically commit to Kirk Cousins for 2 years, and try to you start your succession plan hopefully either this year or next year. So that leaves the hitting the quarterback, and we have not. I think most people know we have not been able to sack the quarterback since John Abraham left in 2012, and I think we have the least amount of sacks as a team over that tenure. I pray, I'm hoping that we get an edge rusher that can be that guy in this draft. And I think the majority of Falcons fans would say that, because we're really tired of watching our defense get teams in a long and third position and not be able to close it out by getting to the quarterback. We've got a lot of good second and third round talent on that line, but we need our Aaron Donald. We need our Myles Garrett. We need a beast. I don't want to make that pick because there's 3 really good edge rushers in this draft who all have different flavors and all have different skill sets. It seems like Dallas Turner is probably the highest consensus rated of those 3, with Verse and Latu being the other 2. I think Dallas Turner has a huge ceiling, but he hasn't quite put it all together. He obviously played at Alabama. He's got great pedigree there, but we have drafted first-round edge rushers with tons of athletic talent who have turned into nothing. Takk McKinley, Vic Beasley, Jamal Anderson. I mean, there's a long list of us failing in this position. So I think, we're in a position to pick the best defensive player on the board at 8. I would also say that I would be really happy if we could trade down and maybe pick up another second-day pick, because we've got a couple of other needs. I think, we could still stay within that top 15, which I'd be happy with, because there's also cornerback is also our need for us. And there is still some edge talent. This is a deep edge class that we could play with. But, man, I'd love for Dallas Turner. If we pick at 8 and we pick Dallas Turner, I just hope he's that guy. We just really need that in Atlanta. The other thing is we need some wide receiver help still. We've made some moves in the offseason, but I still think we could use a stable wide receiver 2 for the long term. Ladd McConkey, man off my own heart, Georgia Bulldog. The joke is the Falcons never draft Georgia players, and I would love for them to get Ladd maybe in that second round. But this is going to be a defensive draft. Raheem Morris has come in. This is going to be Raheem Morris. While he's been on both sides of the ball, he's a defensive guy. Obviously, winning a Super Bowl as DC of Sam's Rams. He was on the defensive side in Atlanta when he was a coach here, as well as a wide receivers coach, as well as a lot of other things. And I think him and and his staff are going to really try to get deep. They did a great job last year with the Rams, bringing a lot of rookies and getting the most out of them. And so I'm excited to see what he does. And then I will say this, there was a crazy mock draft that had us trying to trade up and take Marvin Harrison Jr., all of the Julio Jones trade from years ago, which we will be talking about later. But anyway, I think that's our needs. It's edge, it's cornerback, it's wide receiver, and then you fill out your lines. That's what I think the Falcons are looking at, with hopefully maybe a slight trade down from 8 to maybe 11, 8 to maybe 12, 15, somewhere in there.
I got a question for you, Chapman. When it comes to the edge rushers, would you rather have a more polished guy in Latu, or the guy with all the potential in Dallas Turner? Which of those two would you rather go for?
It's a great question, Tom. I don't know. I honestly, I go back and forth. We because we've been so starved for it. I want our, again, like I said, I want our Myles Garrett. I want our Bosa. I want our guy. And I think Dallas has that potential. Latu, though, as you said, can come in and play and probably get, possibly 10, like right under 10 sacks is what they're saying. He's great. I wouldn't be and that's the thing where I'm like, if you trade back a couple, you get a day 2, and then maybe you just end up with Latu and you're happy, right? And then whichever one's going to get me 15 sacks a year for the next 8 to 9 to 10 years. That's who I want. If you can tell me which one that is, I'll be happy and take it there.
Yeah, Chapman, I've just a quick one from me. I've got you guys going Turner from Alabama because I think he's the best fit as an edge rusher from what the Falcons need. My scenario is if JJ McCarthy's sitting there at number 8, not knowing how Kirk Cousins is going to be, do you risk and taking him and sitting him for a year and a bit?
In that case, I think you're thinking Minnesota's still there with their 11-23, and I think you got to take their 11-23 and go down. I think the Falcons should consider a quarterback in the second round, and I think they are. I know they've been doing work with Penix. I think my view would be this: if we can, I would look to go for 2025 with that next quarterback. I know only because I think, again, we're at a place where we have made the bet on Kirk Cousins. We're laying in that bed for better or for worse, and I'm fine with that. And I think, because again, there was no good options for us unless we mortgaged everything and whatever. So I don't mind McCarthy as much as Karl does. I don't think I would take him at that place at 8 though. That's just me, especially with the value that I think other teams might be placing on him. And I think I'd rather get those I'd rather take somebody else's picks in this one. Now, if May is there at 8, you run as quickly as you can, which he won't be, but if he was there, you run as quickly as you can to the thing and you take him. I think he would be the one where I'd be like 100%. If any one of those top 3 fall to you at 8, you take them. That's why I think it's funny you guys arguing about it, because I'm like, I take all, I don't know. I think for me, you say, well, I don't want to take the third quarterback, but there's 3 great wide receivers. We're all arguing about, but it just matters your tiers. Like, there's a clear drop off, I think, from Williams to Jaden Daniels. I think you can make arguments for both. And then I think, as Karl put it so eloquently earlier, I think McCarthy is on that next tier below. He is, but he's still, he still could potentially be a great, a good quarterback. We don't know, but it's all about what you value, I think. So anyway, but that's enough. That's enough Falcons draft talk for you guys tonight.
Brilliant, thank you, Chapman. It's an interest again, and they're all interesting, but I will use that word a lot, interesting, because this draft for me is a very important time for the NFL, I think, in terms of the players that are available and the depth of a lot of these positions. I know there's certain positions which I think haven't been as strong in other years, and I think for me this one is probably one of the strongest across the board in most positions compared to others, in my opinion. We're going to move on to a team that don't have a first round pick, which is the Browns with Oliver. I know that they're still feeling the aftermath of that Watson trade. So, Ollie, do you want to go ahead and talk about your draft picks, seeing as that we're talking about the lower end of the draft?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, you don't need first round picks to get good players, and I think your Rams have probably proved that more than anyone else over the last few years. But so I suppose what I will do is just give a kind of brief overview of where we're at, kind of the outlook going into the draft, and then just kind of roll off a few quick positions that I think personally they'll be looking at, and just a few players in them ranges. Obviously, like you said, don't pick until 54 in the second round. We've also got pick 85 in the third round, as well as a 5th, a 6th, and 2 7th round picks. The roster is in a pretty good spot, though, so there's not really any positions glaringly obvious that you need to fill. So from that aspect, you just kind of take your best player available at the positions of need that you need. And I think the positions that they will be looking at, number one would be offensive tackle or guard. Jed Wills is on his 5th-year option. Jack Conklin's injury history. Joel Bitonio is not getting any younger. They're all on a lot of money. You need to get cheaper on the O-line anyway. So I think that will be the number one position they look to tackle in their first 2 picks. Hopefully, the Chiefs don't take Kingsley Sumiata, because that would be my number one pick. But I don't think he will be there at 54. So you're looking more at a Kyron Amadeji at a Yale or a Roger Rosengard out of Washington. They're 2 players that I think they'll be looking at in that 54 to 85 range. Or guard Christian Haynes out of UConn, I think, is another player in that range. And if they want to go day 3 in that range, you know how much I love talking about day 3 picks. So if they do want to go day 3, then I'd look at a Walter Rouse out of Oklahoma, a Frank Crum out of Wyoming, or a Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State. I think linebacker is probably the second glaringly slight position of need. They haven't really invested much capital into the position under Andrew Berry. But I think this year will be the year that they change that, just given the turnover in the room from last year. Again, players I think they will look at would be an Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M or a Junior Colson out of Michigan. And if they want to go late, day 3 range, which I think they probably will at linebacker, I'd think they'd be looking at a Cedric Gray out of North Carolina or a Jordan McGee out of Temple. Tight end is another interesting one because there's only 3 tight ends currently on the roster. And obviously Aikens and Ricky aren't exactly roster locks. So I think they will look at tight end. But Jatavian Sanders is an interesting one. I'm sure a lot of you have also looked at him as well. I could see him being there at 54, but I don't think the Browns will invest their second round pick in tight end. They tend to look more at premium positions. So I don't think he's kind of, on their board. So I think they'll look at more of a Ben Sano out of Kansas State. Or an Eric All out of Iowa in those kind of, maybe 85 plus range. Wide receiver is another interesting one. It's not a position so much of need, but you've got Cooper and Moore obviously on the last year of their contract. I would love Lad McConkey, like Chapman was saying, but I just don't see it. I just don't think it's going to be possible. Maybe they trade up in the second, but I think it's more likely they trade back. So I think he's off their board. Hopefully, Tom's Chiefs don't take Keon Coleman, because he is my dream scenario. I think he could be there at 54 just because of the testing and everything that went on with there. But if not, you're kind of looking at a Malachi Corley, Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, or a Tez Walker out of North Carolina. I think that's their kind of 4 major positions that they will be looking at. And those players that I mentioned, I think are kind of off the cuff one as well is running back with Nick Chubb. Obviously, we're not entirely sure if he's going to be back to full health or if he's even going to be ready to start the season. Again, they don't like to target non-premium positions in their first, their early picks. So that would be more of a later round pick. You're looking more at an Audric Estime at a Notre Dame or an Aidan Robbins at a BYU. And I think as well, cornerback, we've got 3 on the roster. A lot of people won't think that they will take a cornerback, but Andrew Berry loves taking cornerbacks, and just someone who's a bit of my draft darling anyway, as a DeCamerion Richardson out of Mississippi State. I just think he's the prototypical Browns cornerback. He's long, he's fast, and just someone that I would keep an eye on them drafting that people might not think they will. Just to kind of sum that all up, I suppose, my personal dream scenario would be a Keon Coleman at 54 and a Kyron Amadeji at 85 probably. But again, I'd be happy with any combination of Tinsley Sumiatia, Roger Rosengard, Christian Haynes, or Ben Sano. That I'd be happy with any of them in the first 2 picks, and then just using those day 3 picks to add depth pieces at the positions that you need. And I also wouldn't be surprised if they trade out of those late picks. I think a lot of teams this year will be looking to trade those later picks, given that it's quite a weak back end of the draft. I think it's the finished draft in terms of players entering in the last 10 years, just given all of the COVID backlog and everything that's kind of happened in college football. It's quite a thin draft. So I think not just the Browns, but a lot of people will look to trade those later picks. And like I said, as a whole, we're in a good position. This is a position that most teams want to be in, where you're going into the draft not really having to find starters. And it's good to say this as a Browns fan that went into drafts over the years trying to find a start in left tackle in the 5th round. So I think it is a good position to be in. But like I said earlier, even if you're picking at 54, 240, there's always players to be found. There's always ways that you can improve your roster. So yeah, that's kind of my overview of the Browns. I hope I didn't bore you too much with the day 3 picks, but as a Browns fan, that's what we've been doing the last couple of years. So I'm happy to do it.
Ollie, will you stay up and watch the first round just for fun?
I'm actually at a wedding. So I don't know. I might, just to see if any of my, like a Keon Coleman or these kind of guys do go late. And if obviously they don't, I will get quite excited then. But I probably will, I watch it most years anyway. So yeah, I probably will still watch the draft.
Ollie, can you see the Browns possibly coming up to maybe first round, trading up someone?
No.
Is it too much capital to give up to?
They don't have the draft capital.
Okay.
They've only got 6 picks this year. Obviously, next year you're finally getting that first round pick back. So I don't think they're going to be in any kind of rush to trade those picks in future years away. I mean, maybe I could see them drafting up to the top end of the 2nd round. Trading up. If someone that they really like is there, like I said, if a Lad McConkey, if they don't think Keon Coleman will make it to 54, or a Tinsley Sumiata, maybe they trade up, but I think it's probably more likely they trade back from 54.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ollie, for that. It's a very in-depth look at some later picks and sort of especially those sort of day 3 picks, which I think, there's a lot of worth looking at those, especially if you are wanting to do a bit more research into draft picks. I do think that looking at those later rounds. I mean, you look at some of the players that have gone in those later rounds, that have gone on to sort of do really big things in the NFL. I do think that we need to, if you do have the time and the ability to do it, go and have a look at those later picks.
I've got one for you, Sam, for that. There's a lot of people are sleeping on is Mike Samerstill, who played with Michigan. He's a really versatile cornerback who can play all over. He's always around the ball, and he's not projected to go very high or anything. But if someone picks him up, in the later rounds, whether it's Ollie's Browns or one of those late round picks, he could be a really big steal for any team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's plenty of players out there that I think that people are going to sleep on. That there's going to be plenty that's going to be going that could really do big things in the NFL. And I think there's we've learned that throughout the years. I mean, you like the likes of Tom Brady. I mean, as the biggest example of players that have gone in those later rounds and have turned out to do big things. I mean, even looking at Mr. Irrelevant from a couple of years ago. So it's. If you get the chance, definitely go and look at those sort of late round picks and see what's around. We will finish off this segment with my Rams. This is a big year for me as an LA Rams fan. This will be the very first ever first round pick I'll get to see the Rams take. So I've got a massive vested interest in this year's draft. Rather than just sitting at home doing nothing, just watching the draft go by, thinking, oh yeah, we could have got him, but no, we don't have any picks. So Obviously, I think going into this draft, before we decided to, before anything sort of had happened in the off season, my immediate thought was it was going to be edge rusher or quarterback. Those are the two picks that I think people were, we have Stafford. He is towards the end of his career. Potentially, this could be his last year. We don't know. And then obviously we've not had a decent edge rusher in God knows how long. So I think going into the draft initially, those are my two focuses. Who could we get in a later round pick at quarterback, or who could we pick up in an edge? Then we had obviously the beautiful news of Aaron Donald. It still hurts of him retiring, and that threw into the option of, well, we now need a D lineman. And as good as I will say, I mean, I'm really impressed with what Kobe Turner did last year in his rookie year. I think he managed to equal Aaron Donald's rookie season in terms of sacks on the year, and that's obviously with being a Rams record. So I do think we have no, I'm not saying he is Aaron Donald, the next one, but he is a very good player to have in that position. But I think in terms of that first round pick, I mean, at 19, me personally, I would go edge. I think we need an edge rusher. We don't have one. I think we are calling out for one, and the guy I would love to see us get is Latu. I think he is a brilliant player, and I think that there are probably going to be a few teams above us that may want to go for him. Obviously, the Falcons potentially being one, although I think Turner's probably going to go to them. I would like to see us get Latu. My gut feeling is that we'll probably go Byron Murphy if he's available at that 19th pick. He is he's a very, very, very good defensive tackle, and I think he could be one that will look to build on the future and have him and Turner. Our Turner, not Dallas Turner, our Turner, as sort of the front guard. I mean, we've got 11 picks in this draft. We've a first, a second, 2/3, 2/5, 4/6, and a seventh. So we've got plenty of picks to work with this year. I do think we've got quite a few needs defensively. I mean, I know we've shored up some players in the cornerback position. I still think we could probably do some later round picks, get a few later round pick corners. The O-line's not. I mean, it's a lot better than what it was a couple of years ago, but I do think maybe we need some depth in that O-line position. Again, linebackers, we've not got a plethora of really good linebackers. I know that we're looking at. I think we've got, Byron Young and I forget the name of the other guy that we've got. But I think Byron Young is on. There wasn't talk that we're actually going to look at taking his 5th year, which I think is a bit interesting. Or we weren't going to offer him a contract this year, so I don't know what's happening with him. Whether we look to, just move on from him, or whether we're just going to continue with wait and see what happens and then maybe pay him. But we'll see with that one. So I do think linebacker, but I do think all of our picks, unless a majority of our picks, are probably going to be on the defensive side. And I do think that, either that edge or defensive tackle will be the position that we go for in that first round pick. That was it. Ernest Jones. Thank you. Ernest Jones. That was the other guy that we have.
Dan, I think that Snead trades out of the first round just to troll the fan base.
It honestly isn't in the. It's not. It could easily happen. I think we may decide if someone like Latu or Murphy isn't available at that pick, then yeah, there is definitely a chance that we do trade out of that first round if the right trade is there for us. So we could look at he's never afraid to trade up or down in the draft, so I can't see it being a problem. He'll find a way. He has Snead is for me is one of the greatest GMs to make decisions and follow making picks. So I'm not fussed if he decides to drop out of it. But me personally, I think if Latu or Murphy's there, you got to take him.
Greg Newsome in a sixth for your first round pick. You said you need corners. I said Greg Newsome in a sixth round pick for your first round pick.
Well, we're not desperate for a corner. We've got our Tre'Davious White and we signed someone else who I can't think of now. Williams, we got him back from in recently. So yeah, I don't see it being a priority. I see it being a depth, but yeah, I don't think we'll go for that.
We talk a lot about trading, and I was just going to throw this out to everybody at this point, but because every year it's always like, oh, let's trade back because we're not going to get a quarterback, so we're blah blah blah, or and it's like it takes teams to trade back. It's not as easy as everyone. I think it's a lot. If you want to trade up and you're willing to pay it, that's a lot easier. But trying to find somebody to trade out of, and the other thing I think too that we start to galaxy brain a little bit, and I wanted to bring this up when David and Karl were talking was like. You're a talent deficient team. Like we were there 3 years ago. The Falcons had nothing. You just got to take the top 10 players when you have a top 10 pick at some point. Now, granted, you get a Godfather offer, you weigh that up. But at some point, like right now, I know the Rams. They overachieved last year, but you still need good players. You know what I mean? You got a top 20 pick. I would say take that top 20 pick. Granted, you got to hit on those picks too. That's the other. That's you got a good GM and you got a good staff of scouts and stuff there, obviously, because you guys find down in the rough. But that's the thing. I'm a big believer, especially watching the 3 years of rebuilds that we've just done. It's like you just got to get talent. And I don't know, David. I don't know if David and Karl feel about this, but just like you guys, you have a lot of defensive talent, but you need a lot of offensive talent. I would, but somebody who's not watched a ton of Patriots, but I just know you guys.
This is why our fan base wants to trade out because they have so many holes to fill on offense. They feel that with that third round, with the number 3 pick, you could get multiple picks down the line to fill those holes. And I get
but you need so much. It's not going to happen overnight. I'd rather just take the best players.
It's going to take years.
If you have no engine in the car, you can't use the car. It doesn't matter how much you do it up. You can't use the car if it's got no engine in it.
That's not a nice thing to say about Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, but I'd argue you don't even really have a car at this point. So I don't. So who cares about an engine? Like I'm much happier in the place that we spent time and built our team to be sustainably right. And yes, we don't have a quarterback, but they knew that was like the paid off. And again, we still might not. I don't know, but it's just interesting. At least we know we have talent on both sides of the ball again. So, lots of ways to do it.
I agree. But you need to pick you've got a top round 5 pick. You need to pick a player from that player. Yeah, it's. Like I say, there's plenty of there is plenty of crazy trades and mock drafts where people are trading up and trading down, and like you say, it isn't just as easy as going, we'll trade back for 5 picks because we don't want the players that are available, because you need to have someone that's going to come in and say, actually no, we want to trade up. And it's a lot easier to sell something that someone wants than to sell something that you don't want. But yeah, I think there's a lot of very sort of what people might see as easy picks, but I don't think there is ever an easy pick in the draft. I think apart from Caleb Williams, I will just say Caleb Williams, he's the easy pick. Rest of it, I think, it could go either way. It depends which way the team wants to go and that. And I suppose while we're on the topic of the draft, I think this is an interesting part that we'll look at is some moments, some of the crazier moments from the drafts over the years. Does anyone want to start us off with what they seem as sort of, we're talking about any sort of, what the hell moments. This could be teams trading up and doing something completely ridiculous that paid off. This could be where teams have picked completely the wrong player. Anything you want. Just what are the craziest moments that you have seen in the draft? Karl, we'll start with you.
Well, we already know about the Herschel Walker trade. That's been beaten to death I don't know how many times. But I'm going to throw a trade out there that no one really talks about. Ricky Williams, 1999 running back. So, Minnesota, they were in a very good prime position. They were on the cusp of going into the Super Bowl, but they always got stymied by the Shield, which is i.e. the San Francisco 49ers, 9 times out of 10. They needed No, hang on, I'm getting the wrong position here. This is it's the Saints, beg your pardon. The Saints needed that running back, and I think it was Mike Ditka who was the coach, and he wanted this Ricky Williams guy. It doesn't care how much it cost him. So what did they do? They sent their entire 1999 entire draft to go and get Ricky Williams, and the first three teams were buffed because I think it was the Colts. They needed a running back, but I think they took Adrian James, I think, if I'm not mistaken. The Browns obviously had their first round pick back in Cleveland. They took Tim Couch, absolutely effing ruined him. No offense, Ollie, and so on.
No offense taken.
They moved up to get to Cincinnati, no good. But Washington, they took all their picks. And they got this Ricky Williams train. They thought it was the heist of the century. And the Saints just completely plateaued into the dirt. The only thing they found was the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. It never worked. And the media coverage between Mike Ditka and Ricky Williams was just some of the most cringiest stuff we've ever seen in our life. So this was actually a trade, but really no team benefited. No team benefited whatsoever.
It's totally forgotten and Ricky ended up going on and having an slightly okay career. They need to make a 30 for, well, whatever they make, Untold, whatever the Netflix version of 30 for 30 is now on him, because he's a really interesting dude. He also was one of the first people who really challenged the NFL on marijuana openly towards the end of his career, because he was using it for both mental health and some other things. But fascinating. He was a complete introvert as a player too, which is why him and Ditka could not get along, and he was seen as, problematic, where he was just like severely introverted. You guys should look him up, because that was a great call, Carl. And
University of Texas,
Heisman winner, I believe.
Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
one of the leading rushers in FBS. He mustard, absolute mustard.
Yeah, he was great.
I got one for you. Although it's not like a trade up or anything, but the fact that Aaron Rodgers fell to the 24th pick was nuts. Alex Smith was the first pick off the board, and Aaron Rodgers just sat in the green room watching the ticks just go by and by and by up until when the Packers, because eventually he obviously thought he was going to be the number one quarterback on the board, and obviously Alex Smith had a good career, decent career, but Aaron Rodgers, the rest is history. First ballot Hall of Famer, 4-time MVP, all that. So that was a crazy one.
So I've got one that I'm sure Chapman probably really enjoyed, which was the Falcons trading up with the Browns to get obviously wide receiver Julio Jones.
You took mine.
I'm sorry. Would you like to talk about? You know what? You talk about that.
You tell me your side, and then I'll do my side.
I've got something to add on to it, so I'll let you talk about that initial trade, and I will add my bit onto it. Sure.
Yeah. So we had gone to the playoffs a couple of times with Matt Ryan, could not get over the hump, and Thomas Dimitroff, the GM of the Falcons for many years, trades from 29 or 19, 24 or something like that to 6 to grab what Nick Saban would call the greatest player he ever coached, at least to that time, and Julio Jones. And if you remember too, there was a big debate between AJ Green and Julio, Alabama and Georgia wide receiver. We traded our first, our second, and our fourth, and the next year's first and a fourth for Julio Jones, which was a huge haul. Julio would go on to be what I think arguably is he's the best receiver of his class, even above Antonio Brown in my money. He would put us over the top in so many ways, and I got to watch him as a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he also gutted our team within a few years because of that talent drop. And there was a lot of issues with paying Julio and other things, even though he was my favorite Falcon of all time and so amazing. But that trade definitely... it had a lot of positives, obviously, with having a Hall of Fame player, but also there were some things that we weren't able to navigate for it. So you go and talk about, was it Whedon? Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the Falcons trade up. I think it's obviously the first that year, first the next year, a second that year, and like you said, 2/4, which is a massive haul. I mean, at the time, nowadays with obviously, people trading 3 first-round picks like it's nothing. At the time, that was seen as a massive, massive haul, something that the Browns, couldn't turn down.
It's still a pretty massive
haul. Get
haul.
out of it? Yeah, even in today's standards, it's a massive haul. And what did the Browns, get out of it? Nothing. Literally nothing. Brandon Weeden, the next year, the 28-year-old quarterback that we drafted in the first round, 28 years, he turned 29 5 games into the season. Now just think about that, a rookie quarterback turning 29 years old. So that hurts me because, like Chapman said, he got to watch, a first ballot Hall of Fame career. I completely agree with everything he said. I think he's the best wide receiver of his generation, one of the best wide receivers of all time. And I'd like to maybe, if I could sit here and say, well, we got this player out of it and we got this player out of it, maybe I could justify it. But no, we got literally nobody. So that one hurts a lot as a Browns fan. And I think as well, just a quick one, similar to Aaron Rodgers falling, Randy Moss falling in 1998 was another big one. I don't know if you've watched the documentary on the Vikings picking him and everything that went into that. I think that's another kind of like wow, kind of like what the hell moment that happened in the draft.
Yeah, I think there's quite a few. I mean, I've obviously not being into the probably as relatively new to the NFL compared to majority of you. I've gone for quite a recent one, and I'd quite like to get David and Carl's opinions on this one, because I think at the time everyone thought this was a very, very strange pick. And I use the term strange because we're going to talk about the 2022 draft in Cole Strange. And I remember when this sort of happened, everyone was like,
Yeah.
who is this guy?
Chattanooga
And I
Mox.
mean, if you look at his college career, his college career is he was, I think, was it 2 times he was the Socon Jacobs blocking trophy winner. Like he had a relatively good career in college, but he was so low in terms of analyst reviews. He was so low down on the list. I mean, if people were saying maybe he was going to be available in the 3rd and the 4th round. So I'd just like to get your idea, because to me, when I was watching that, and everyone was obviously talking about who the Patriots were going to pick, when they went to Cole Strange and they picked him, it was very much to me at the time, seemed a very bizarre pick. So that was mine that I would want to sort of bring to the table.
Yeah, I reckon from my perspective, anyway, it was definitely a reach. But that's how ruthless Bill was. If he had his eye on someone, no matter who it was, he would go and get him. Carl Duggar, for example, he was another reach of safety. He could have gone on way in the 3rd or 4th round, but he picked him in the 1st round in the 2021, was it? 22.
It was 2nd round because it was
Second round, that's it,
I
yeah.
think the dog.
Yeah.
Nike picked him apparently.
That's it, yeah. So, yeah, I get it. And yeah, it was definitely a reach, and it was, like you say, it was a strange pick from my view.
Yeah, Cole, stranger things have happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me. He fared well in his rookie season, but
he's very
still
injury
little to be
prone.
desired.
Yeah.
That draft alone was one of the worst we ever done. It was 3 guards, 2 kickers. We needed receiver help. Anyway, I digress.
I mean, and I suppose if you look at the receivers that went after Cole Strange, I mean, Christian Watson was available at that point, Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie. I know a couple of those have had injury issues and things like that. But I mean, some of the ones that were available, I think you then took Tyquan Thornton, didn't you, in the 2nd round of the 2022 year. So
there was other, for example, George Pickens was waiting for us at 4 or 5 picks down. And yes, he is a bit of a head case for Pittsburgh, but he's got more talent. He would have been a lot better than Tyquan Thornton.
It's all right. The Browns passed him as well, so.
Well, to go back to your Browns, there is one trade I think you completely snuffed up badly. 2014, you traded Trent flipping Richardson to the Indianapolis Colts and you got their first round pick. It became Johnny Bloody Football. Congratulations.
Greatest prospect to ever come out of college, mate. I don't know what you're talking about.
Greatest bust in NFL history.
I love me some Johnny Football. It's a bit of a controversial one in Cleveland. Obviously, not being, living in Cleveland, I probably have different views to a lot of people there. But that was a fun one. But like you were saying, with bad picks and reaches, as a Browns fan, I've seen so many, first round picks be wasted. So it's like it kind of alludes to my point earlier. It doesn't matter how high you're pitching if you don't know what you're doing.
Here's one that you'll talk about, which is pretty recent, so probably you guys will remember this. But how the way the social media also plays into these drafts. When Larry Tunsil's picture of him smoking a bong, and he drops, and he does nothing but become like a Super Bowl player, and then gets traded for 2 first rounds and a second round pick years later from Miami to the Texans and gets paid. That's just like super crazy, talking about players that drop. I'd also say, so I used to go to New York for the draft every year, not to like go to the draft, but I had friends in New York and I'd always be there around that time, go baseball games and whatnot. And I remember that Aaron Rodgers draft. We were all just sitting there and they kept going back to him awkwardly. I barely knew I didn't watch any Cal games back then, so I kind of knew who he was, but it was just like, oh, this guy, let's feel sorry for this dude. But I don't feel sorry for him anymore. But anyway, that was that I'll never forget that, because they literally, ESPN had to stop doing that because it was so embarrassing of them cutting back to players not getting drafted.
What about last year? What about last year as well? I know it's like only a recent one, but Will Levis sat in the green room the whole time waiting to get picked and no one picking him. Like, he's just sat there getting angrier and angrier, like sat with his family and stuff, and then finally does get picked. But and it'll be interesting to see what he turns out to be. But that was, I just saw it just kept. It's just so bad, isn't it, Chapman, when it just keeps going back to them, just sat there waiting, sweating, like what's going to happen, and it just, I mean, that clock feels like probably a million years. So
I think as well with talking about players falling, it's always the funniest reasons. I mean, like you said, obviously Laramie Tunsil with the gas mask bong, but I mean, you look at DeJuan Jones last season. He fell to the 4th round. I mean, most mocks had him in the 1st round, and he fell to the 4th round, and all the kind of stuff that was coming out of it was that he wanted to play in the NBA, and that's the reason he fell. And it's just things like that. You just think, did that many teams really think that, or is that just And it's just the amount of times where, like you said, something funny or something as little as a post on social media, or something as funny as what I just said, is what can result in someone being a 1st round pick to a 4th round pick. It's just crazy how it happens.
DeJuan Jones. Sorry to cut you off, Ollie. DeJuan Jones. He was a tackle. Yeah,
6'8", behemoth, absolute out of Ohio State.
I wanted him in the second round. I wanted him in the second round last year. I was screaming at the TV, "Get me DeJuan Jones!" As soon as I've forgotten who we took at number 2 again, because I've lost it. I was like, really. And then your Browns took, and I was like,
I wanted him in the second round. I'd have been very happy taking him in the second round, and we got him in the 4th round. So, and he had an unbelievable rookie year. Obviously, came in to replace Jack Conklin. I think pretty much had like the best stats out of any of the tackles that were taken this year, and pretty much proved that he should have been a much higher pick.
Yeah, I think for me, I've got a couple that springs to mind. One of them is the draft bust, is the Trey Lance, where 49ers paid 3 round picks, is it? 3 first round, 21, 22, 23.
3 first round
and
picks
a third,
for Trey Lance.
I think it was. That's just mental. And then obviously, I wish Sean was available because he's a Giants fan. That controversial Manning not wanting to go to the Chargers and Archie getting involved, that I've never seen where a player's kind of like denied to literally play for the team that's drafted them. I don't see why they don't do that more often.
Yeah, what about John Elway as well for the Baltimore Colts, whatever it was, that he refused to suit up for them because he was like, I'm just not going to play. So That was crazy as well.
You need leverage in those situations. I mean, obviously, with the Mannings having the Manning name, that gives them that leverage. And was Elway drafted into the MLB? Was that him or was that someone else? But
He was.
there's certain players. Yeah, so obviously he had the leverage of being able to say, "Well, I'll just go play baseball if you draft me." So, and obviously, I know a lot of people were talking about that.
Oh, that was
John Elway, was it?
was
Yeah.
it Elway or was it someone else? No, it
It was
wasn't
Elway.
Elway.
He was drafted in the MLB as well.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another.
There's a few that have been
not another
drafted.
quarterback, but another player.
Russell Wilson.
Bo Jackson.
Yeah. But
Bo Jackson's a prime example.
But obviously, everyone was talking about it this year with Caleb. Everyone was saying, "Well, why doesn't he refuse to play for the Bears?" And even as someone that I'm probably number one on the Caleb fan club, he doesn't have the clout almost to do that. If he does that, then all, the rest of the teams can just go, okay. Like, do you know what I mean? He doesn't have that Manning aura above him that can kind of override that, or like you said, the leverage of the MLB. So obviously, when that does happen, I mean, I think, yeah, like you said, Manning's the last one to do it. I wonder who will be the next one to do it.
I just got one more. Obviously, this is an obvious one as well, but Mahomes getting picked by the Chiefs, but like everyone thought that it was going to be Deshaun Watson, that he was going to drop to the Saints. I know that Sean Payton was absolutely obsessed with Mahomes, but coming out of college, he was like middling, didn't have great footwork, but he was obviously a good player, but played in some terrible teams for Texas Tech. For him to come in, for the Chiefs to trade up in the first round to get him ahead of the Bills, and then for him to turn into what he has done, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, like that was a nuts one. And then the Bills obviously get Josh Allen a year afterwards. So
yeah, some absolutely brilliant what the hell moments in the drafts throughout the years. Obviously, we're finishing with Mahomes, and the talk of Caleb. Can he live up to those heights of becoming the next GOAT, shall we say? We love to throw that term around of the sort of the quarterbacks, and that's sort of just to sort of end the show there. Lads, it's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, leading into next week, we are going to be continuing with the draft talk, and we are looking at bringing in another element. And we've seen so many drafts, and that's why I wanted to finish on the Caleb thing, because we all know Caleb's going to go at 1, but I'm interested to see who's gonna. We're gonna do a nice little mock draft out between ourselves, and it'll be interesting to see who you guys pick throughout that first round. So that's what we're looking at next week. But lads, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. Catch us on at the usual places. Get us on Twitter. Get following. Listen to the podcast on Apple or Spotify. And until next week, guys, have a great week, and we'll see you all when we return next week for another episode of Hurdle the Line.